So basically the words gap itself is actually something that is missing, okay? Something that have a difference, okay? Some void, okay? Something that needs to fill in, okay? So that is the gap. So when we talk about research gap, okay, like for example, just now Mr. Han was explaining what he did for his research. Okay, the first about research gap is actually you are trying to fill the a missing or insufficient information in your research topic or in your area. Okay, so you try to cover what is not covered in the topic. Okay. Second one, you are actually addressing the research needs. Okay, you are giving a justification or you are justifying why your research is very important to be conducted. You try to find a solid justification why you need to conduct this research. Okay, why is it important for you to study in that particular area? And the third one is research gap is about a question, a problem that has not been answered in any other research before. Okay, so you are trying to answer that question, you are trying to solve that problem, in which the third point is actually goes back to your definition of research. It's actually to solve a problem. I can see a hand here. Someone raised the hand. Do you have any question? Okay, and then the next one, it's about a concept or ideas that have not been studied at all. This is the area from this generation, okay, or the this new era and so on. It's very difficult to find the area that has not been studied before, okay, because the things that happen to the world, you know, with the advance of technology, the advance of the finding information database and so on. So almost all areas of research actually have been addressed. But what you need is actually to find the gap. Okay? So always remember that your PhD journey is not about you trying to change the world. Okay? You are not changing the world. You are not developing something that have not been developed before. But always bear in mind, put in your mind that your PhD work, your PhD journey is actually try to enhance the existing knowledge. Okay? Your PhD journey is actually try to contribute to something that is novel, that is something that is to fill in the gap. Okay? Because PhD journey is a beginning of you as a researcher, as an academician. So you will have long way to go in your career or in the process of you conducting a research. So PhD is just a beginning for you. Because within the time given, you have like 3 years to complete. So never be too ambitious to change the world. Okay? All right? And so why is it very important for you to identify a research gap? Okay, this is actually a start of your PhD journey. Okay, maybe you don't realize that, but once you start your journey, once you start your um, initial thoughts or you initiate to do your PhD, come up with your topic, you already addressing some important issues. Okay, you are already addressing something that you want to do, but maybe you don't realize it. that you already have some ideas on the problem, on the gap of the research or the issue that have been studied before. Right. So it's very important to identify a research gap because, like I said, it is the beginning for you to identify the direction for your potentially new and exciting research. Okay? Research gap is the fundamental point for you to formulate your research problem, the problem statement. Okay? So with my students, usually, I always tell them that you don't pluck your problem from the sky. It doesn't fall from the sky. Okay? The problem must be solid based from some issues. Okay. These issues, right? It can be from two sources. First, you read a lot of things, so you identify your problem from the literature. Okay. Second, some of the students, some of the researcher, they came with the industry background. Okay, they've already worked before and so on. So the problem exists. They know that the problem exists in their organization or in their country, or they encounter the problem themselves. They know that there is a problem, but they don't really take the problem from the facts. Okay, so problem statement, you identify the research gap. It's important for you to have the facts. Okay, you can take the facts from the statistics. For example, if you are saying that, many of you tend to say that, a construction industry is facing a serious problem in terms of productivity, performance, the application of new technology, the health and safety on site. Okay, that is our big problem. Everyone that works in the industry knows that. Okay, but from where does that come from? Who say that? Okay, so from where that you get that information? What is the statistic? How bad is the performance? When you say that we have a very poor performance, so how poor is the performance? Is it unacceptable? Are there any other industry that is much more lag behind than the construction? So you need to have all this data, all these facts, in order for you to really shows that there is a problem and there is a gap that you need to fill in. Okay, so then only it's be easier for you to identify the direction of your new exciting research. Okay. The second one is to ensure that your research is not a duplication work that has been done for others. Okay, this is a serious matter because in PhD journey, okay, around the world, not only USM, not only Asia, it's around the world. Or in fact, if you want to publish paper and so on, plagiarism is a very serious issue. Okay, so when you identify your gap, it's important for you to know that your work or your research or your proposed research have not been addressed or have not been done by others before. Okay, because if not, you are wasting your 3 years journey, 4 years journey, repeating the work that have been done by others. That's one thing. And the second thing, you will have a serious allegation on the plagiarism thing, and then your ethics and so on as a researcher, as a scholar, will be affected. So this is very important. So when you do your research, you need to know who are the main scholars in your area. Okay? The next one is to ensure novelty of your contribution to knowledge in your research area. Okay, this is also very important because one of the criteria or the fundamental in PhD is about contribution to knowledge, and also contribution, the practical contribution to the industry, to the society, and so on. So how do you contribute to your knowledge? Okay, so when you have some novelty, like for example, you are filling the gap, so that will be a contribution to your knowledge. Okay, for example, you are using, for example, I take the system theory. Okay, system theory, the initial, based on the history of system theory, it was actually for a system, a closed system that is very stable. Okay, like for example, in manufacturing, for machines, and so on, for very stable environment. But later on, there is evolution in the system theory, in which the researcher have addressed system theory as the open system concept. Okay, in which they put a system theory in unstable environment. Okay, they, they look into they apply the system theory into the organization. For example, they apply the system theory into the human medical process, for example. So that is a contribution to knowledge. You give a new direction or a new dimension to a theory. Okay, you don't come up with a new theory, but you contribute to improve the theory. Okay, all right. So last one, of course, after you did a hard work of your research, previous research, you want to share your knowledge with others. Okay, and then now it's part of the requirement for your graduation that you need to publish. Okay, so when you have a clear gap of research, okay, you are able to identify a clear research gap. This will increase your chances of publication in the reputable journal. So this one, I will show you some example later in the journal, or even you can apply this in your thesis, how you raise a question on the research gap. Okay, so this publication will be a way for you to disseminate your knowledge, what you have found out. Okay, is important in the academic area. Okay, to be a researcher, to be the academician, you are able to share your findings, you are able to share your knowledge through your publication, through your write-up. Okay? In fact, if you are still at the beginning of your research, okay, it's a very good opportunity for you now in the process to identify your research gap. You can have a paper on the, for example, the literature review, for example, systematic literature review, and so on. So from there, identifying your gap for your research, and at the same time, you can use that material for your publication. Okay, that will be beneficial for you. Okay, you can do it two in one. Right. So basically, okay, for you to identify a research gap, okay, to sum up what I have said in the last two slides, it is actually about deciding on your research problem that you should study, and also deciding on your research scope, the area that you need to study, what you need to study, in order for you to come out with the innovative research question, in order for you to ask the relevant question that will make an impact for your research. Okay, it's the fundamental thing for you to identify this research gap. Usually what I did, this is a practice that what I usually do with my students and so on. And it is what being practiced by my supervisor when I did my PhD last time. First time that I met him, he just need 2 pages from me on the problem statement or research problem identify my gap, what I want to do. So during my time, I remember I need to repeat many times of 2 pages write up until I get it right. Okay, so the same thing I apply to my students. Okay, when you started, if you are with me, so you need to get your problem right, because this is the fundamental that you will bring towards throughout your PhD journey. Okay, so from the research gap, you identify the problem. When you identify the problem, you can raise the right question. And from that question that you raise, you will soon develop your objective, aim, and so on. Okay, so it will go from there. So it's important for you to get it right, right? So how do you identify your research gap? Okay. How can you do it in the easier way? Okay, to share with you. First of all, need to know your interests. Okay, once before you apply for your PhD, you need to do some sort of proposal. Okay, a few pages write up proposal, what kind of research that you are interested in. What are your key motivating issues? Okay, key motivating issues is very important. Okay, because this is what you will be studying in your 3 years journey as a PhD student. Okay? It is about you. Okay? It's not about your supervisor. It's not about your co-supervisor. What they are telling you to do. It is about you. Okay? Because some of the students they come and then they prefer for the supervisor to allocate for them for the topic. Okay, and so on. But it's very important that you are motivated and you have a deep interest in the topic. Okay, so it's because that will be your what you do throughout the day, throughout the night, when you wake up from the sleep, and so on. This will be the thing that you carry with you throughout your journey. So it's very important that you are motivated towards the topic, to know the basic foundation about your topic. So we start first with this one, and I'm sure all of you here already have this first point. The second one is you need to identify the key terms related to the topic. Okay, so when you read the journal paper, okay, after the abstract, we'll find the keywords that the author used for his or her paper, right? So when for yourself, for your topic, okay, once you identify your research area, you need to identify what are the keywords for your research. Okay? Because this will lead you on how you find your literature. Okay? So the keywords doesn't need to be so many. Okay, usually when we do research, when we do the paper, the keywords maximum is 5. Okay, 5 keywords that is related to your interest in your research. Okay, the next one, when you identify your keyword, you need to find the latest or current literature related to the key terms of your topic. Okay, we will go through this point 3 later on how you can find relevant literature easily. Okay, so you need to find what is related, what have been done in your area. Okay, so what have been done doesn't mean that it's only come from the journal paper, from the books, and so on. Books is a bit outdated sometimes. Usually we use the journal paper, but It can also come from the current issues. Like, for example, you have the Prime Minister's speech, okay? What the vision for the country for the next 5 years, for example. You can have the central bank report in relation to the economy, for example. Or you can have, like, for example, in Malaysia, we have a 5 year plan, okay, the Rancangan Malaysia. Okay, you can have that the government aim, whatever is in that specific topic related to your idea or your area, or it can be in terms of what have been done by the authorities, for example, in Malaysia for construction, the Construction Industry Development Board can see their transformation plan, okay, whatever that there is, that they have discussed. So that can be part of the issues that we blend in together with your literature. Okay, because just now, remember, I told you that some from the literature, some is actually from the real case situation, the real problem that is happening, but you don't know, from where it comes from. So it needs to come from the facts. Okay, right. Okay, the next one is you need to critically view the literature, and you need to identify the issues, the component that is not addressed by the literature. So my key words here is critically review. You need to be critical. Okay, most of the problem with the students, okay, when I go through their work, or sometimes when I be the examiner, in the literature review part, they are lacking of a critical analysis. Okay, you presented a literature review, but that literature review is what it is in the literature. You don't question the literature review. You don't have a debate on that. You don't ask question why the author do that. So having a critical mind is very important. Okay, so you need to critically review your literature, and you need to ask question. Okay, so how do you be critical? Okay, how you want to read critically? Okay, you need to read with an open mind. Okay, I saw a student on Han Yun raising a hand. Yes. Any question? Oh, okay. Okay, I continue. All right. So you need to read with an open mind. Okay? You don't confine yourself saying that, okay, I want to do this topic, this is what I think. Okay, apology accepted. Accidentally press the hand. Okay, you actually cannot confine yourself of what you want to do. Some students come with they already set their mind that, I want to do this topic, I want to do a quantitative method, I want to survey, and then I want to analyze using this kind of method. Okay, you already plan. Okay, remember that PhD is actually a process. Okay, can plan, but when you do a literature review, as you go through the process in solving the problems, things may change. Okay, so you need to read with the critical mind. So, how do you read the critical? How do you read with the critical mind? How do you train yourself to have a critical thinking? So, when you do the reading, make sure you keep asking a question. Okay, this is related to finding a research gap, identify the gap. You need to keep asking the question of what is not covered. Okay, so that is the first one, addressing the issues or the question of what. Second, you ask the question of why. Why do this author conduct this research? Why there is a need for this research? Why is it so important? Okay, so why this topic is very interesting. The third one, you ask the question. This is a very important question of how. Okay, how do the author conduct this research? How do the author address the problem? How do the author solve the problem? Okay, how do the author contribute to the knowledge? Okay, so when you read, you ask a question and make sure you take note on that. Okay, it's okay for you to have like one page of the paper, you have some mind map, or you have some simple notes, whatever that you can understand, because you will be using that. The next one is learn to prioritize the gap. Okay, when you go through the paper, okay, after you ask that question, what, why, how, and so on, you will find that, you know, the gap can be in terms of the population, for example. For example, the author in the certain research, their focus is on the large construction company. Okay, so there is a gap on studying topic in the small construction company, because my area is small construction company. How do you see this in the SME? That is one gap. Or maybe that people are studying this issue in the developed country, okay? But they are less being discussed in the developing countries. Okay, that can be one. So, and then also in terms of scope, for example, so people are studying that in the manufacturing or in the IT industry, but people don't look at this in the construction industry. For example, currently I am doing on the big data management. So when we talk about the big data management, the scope, the literature is usually comes from IT, okay, or the marketing, okay, how they use big data in order to market products, you know, to see the customer needs, customer demand, and so on. So big data is also used in terms of finance, banking, you know, but very less people are using it in the construction industry. So how do we address that issue? Right? So the third one, the gap can be methods. Okay. This is the problem with the students, because they always tend to fill in the gap just for the method. Okay, for example, the current research is doing a survey. Okay, and the analysis is just using the SPSS, for example. So now the current trend, students love to use the PLS or PLS walk, for example. Last time they used the SCM and so on. So now PLS walk. So you see the gaps in the method. So you want to apply the new techniques, method of analysis, other conditions. But it is important for you to actually prioritize your gap. You need to think what is more important to fill in the gap. Is it just your study you want to fill in the gap in terms of methods, in terms of analysis, or in terms of, you know, just doing it at a different country? Because I understand most students, okay, it's easier for your data collection. You want to do it based on the experience of your country. Like for example, you are doing on the green sustainability and so on in Nigeria. Want to do the about the application of smart building, green building, and so on in the experience of the Gulf country, for example, or in Pakistan, for example. But is it enough to fill in the gap? Okay, at the end of the day, you need to justify why. For example, if you choose to use it to do it in Nigeria, in Pakistan, in the Gulf country, you need to address a bigger issue. For example, you are chosen that population or you are choose that scope because most of the studies has been carried out in the developed country. Less studies is conducted in the developing countries. Okay, this is just example I give you. Because at the end of the day, you should be able to justify why you did what you did. Okay, so not just a matter for you to, it's easy to conduct your country for data collection because your supervisor asks you to do it and so on. But your justification, the reason why you choose that has to be scientific. Okay, so you learn to prioritize. Okay, so usually the main priority is to fill in the gaps in terms of scope. Okay, in terms of the area that has not been covered. Okay, methods is actually depends on the way how you see things. Okay, whether you want to go for qualitative and quantitative, sometimes it depends on the literature that you've gone through. Okay, some area, like for example, you are doing in terms of indoor air quality and so on. So that kind of topic, you know, um, most of it, the methods from one research to another research will be similar. Okay, you are doing it in labs and so on, and you are actually measuring the quality of the air and so on. So the methods may be similar. Maybe the difference is the way you do the analysis. Right? Okay. So after we talk about how to find and so on, it seems so difficult. I'm sure that it's actually not an easy task. Okay, it's a very challenging task. Okay, so usually students will say that there are so much literature in the field, enormous of literature, and then you can get very overwhelmed with the amount of information online. Currently, with the advanced technology and so on, you name it, you just Google it, everything will come out. So how do you differentiate or how do you prioritize in this picture? We will go on that later to help you. And then you can also get overwhelmed with the, other research that is not really related to your area, but is actually addressing some of your keywords. So it's important for you to filter the information that you're trying to find. Okay? And then, because of this, you need to set your boundaries. Because, like I said just now, you're not going to change the world. So you set your boundaries of the things that you need to cover. So going back to my earlier slides, that is why it is very important for you to identify your keywords of maximum of 5. Okay? The more keywords that you have, the bigger will be your boundaries. You need to set your boundaries. Okay? You need to identify what are the things that you need to exclude. At the beginning of your research, at the beginning of your study, you will have lots of things. You will keep downloading all the paper from all kind of database. Okay? I name it, you got it. Okay? That's a normal syndrome for PhD students. Okay? Then you will also have the habit of printing all those papers and put it in a file and so on. But it's important for you to scan through, okay, so that you won't get overwhelmed with this lots amount of information, and try to exclude, filter things. It's okay if you download and so on, but after you go through the process, you need to filter and remove some of the little tiny literature that is not related to you, because you want less headache, right? And you don't want to make your life much easier. Okay? And read with the critical mind and challenge the idea is a big challenge for students. Okay? Because I remember last time my supervisor used to tell me this is actually because when I started, I have a problem of this, to be critical, to ask questions, to argue, to question on the idea and so on. So my supervisor, I still remember, he used to tell me that, you know, not having that critical mind is actually not your fault. This is actually a culture of Asian countries. Okay? Because from school, we've been taught to be obedient. We listen to our teachers, we listen to our lecturers, and Asian people are very obedient and very polite. Okay? So we don't argue. Okay? We don't ask questions when our parents ask us to do something. We don't question things. In school, is also the same. Okay, we receive instruction from the teachers. Okay, we ask whatever the teachers ask us to do and so on. We are a very nice, obedient. When you do your PhD, I'm not saying that you don't have to be obedient now, no. But when you do your PhD, slowly change the way you think. Okay, it's about your journey, shaping your mind. Okay, testing the way you think. You need to be more critical. Okay, you can train your mind to be critical if you have a lots of reading. Okay, like I give the tips just now. You ask the question of what, why, and how. Okay, and maybe you can, you ask how you can make things differently, how you can contribute more. Okay, so it's important for you to read with a critical mind. Okay, you train yourself. That along the process, along the journey, if you do this, you will find out after 3 years, PhD will shape your thinking. The way you think will be different. Okay? And okay, tips. How do you do that? Okay, just now we say that you have a lot, enormous information. So one of the tips that you can do for you to find this research gap, okay, from the literature, you go through a quality paper. Okay, for example, the paper that is published in Web of Science, okay, ISI, and also Scopus. Okay, this is the main database that you should look into. Okay, so you enter the keywords that you use to find the paper in this database. So you already set the boundaries. Okay, your research or the gap that you fill in will be from the established work, established research. Second, remember that your research needs to be current. You're not going to address the issue in the 70s or in the 60s or even in the 90s. Things change a lot. So go for the latest and current literature. So in the database, you can set, okay, maybe you look into 10 years back. Okay, but in order for you to find the research gap, okay, what is the current issue and so on, you only look into the 5 years back. Okay, so from now 2020, so you look up to 2015. Okay, but whatever the last question, the killer sentence before you ask the research question should be current in 2020. But remember, your PhD takes 3 years. By the time you go to Viva, it's actually already 2023 or 2024. Okay, so know that PhD is a process. So from time to time, you need to revisit, you need to update, okay, to make sure that what current. Okay. The third one is before you download your paper, before you decided that you want to go for this as your reference, write a research guide, please scan through the abstract. Okay, so from here you will know basically whether the paper or the research that you are looking at is relevant to you or not. Please scan through the abstract because the abstract will tell you what is the research is about, the aim and objective, how the research is conducted, what is the main findings, and what are the contribution of the research, the paper. Then another easier way for you is to look into the discussion part. Usually, discussion part, you will see that the author will compare their research with other research, okay? How they contribute, fill in the gap with other research, and they will suggest to you for the improvement. The same goes on the suggestion for future research. What do they suggest? What do the authors suggest for the next research to cover? So, and then also at the conclusion part. Okay, conclusion part, they usually will give the identification on how they contribute knowledge, okay, in certain area. So from there, with your critical reading, you can identify the gap that is not being covered, that is not being contributed. And last one is when you find a paper in 2020, look at the reference section for another related paper in that. Okay? So this will make your life much more. Okay? Okay. I give you the example. Okay, can you hear me? I try to speed up. Yeah? Can you hear me? Okay, good.
Yes,
all right.
we're
So for
ready.
example, all right. Thank you. Okay. For example, this is a ISI paper from Journal of Cleaner Production. Okay, I am doing on absorptive capacity on the SMEs and so on. So this paper is actually a very recent paper. Okay, so it is published in 2020, was accepted in 2019. Okay, recently published. Okay, this paper talks about absorptive capacity and green innovation adoption in SMEs, the mediating effects of sustainable organizational capabilities. So from just now, I asked you to scan through on the abstract, right? So in the abstract, okay, you can see that this paper is actually investigate the mediating role of 3 sustainable capabilities. So their boundaries, they are looking at sustainable orientation, sustainable human capital, and sustainable collaboration. So that is their scope. Okay, so how do they do it? Okay, they are doing a survey 193 owners and managers of the SME. So their scope is they're doing for the SME. So their analysis is actually they are doing on the partial least square based structural equation modeling. So that is their analysis part. And they also presented their findings. So it's, you can know that from the literature whether it's related to or not. Okay. So moving on. So you can see, okay, they are actually offer the new thing that they offer from the past study. They fill in the gap from the past study. They link the absorptive capacity to the sustainable capabilities and green innovation adoption in the SMEs context. Because absorptive capacity, the topic is usually for the large organization. So that's how they fill in that. Okay? So they offer a new insight from the past study. This is the keywords. Okay? Right. So in their paper, okay? So right, they are presenting on the previous research, what has been done on the question, okay? And then before they ask question, before they justify what they did, they manage to demonstrate that there is a gap. For example, here, all right? So the issue is more evident in developing context, the key role of SMEs in driving the local economy. So prior studies, meaning that the previous studies, has considered absorptive capacity and green innovation in SME context are very limited. So they don't say that. Someone else say that. Okay, so they don't pluck this from the sky. It's been established. Okay, and those were mainly theoretical or qualitative in nature. Okay, at the same time, the research effort that examine the role of internal capabilities are very scarce. So it's very limited. Okay, so they also argue that the empirical research on green innovation adoption has very hardly undertaken in developing contexts. So they are tackling the issues in the developing countries. Okay, so they give a table, okay, and it specifically mentioned that they are filling the gaps. Okay, why they are the filling of the gaps is very important. They mentioned that filling these gaps would be great importance for advising innovation policies in SMEs, meaning that Moline 2014 has suggested for this research, for the future research. Okay, therefore, based from this, the aim of this research is actually to examine the impact of absorptive capacity, green innovation adoption in the SMEs. So their context will be the Egyptian SMEs, in particularly relevant study for two reasons. Okay, just now I mentioned about the population, right? Why you choose certain countries, right? So for two reasons. One is because 80% of Egypt's GDP is contributed by 70% of the labor force. So this justify why it's important. Secondly, Egyptian SMEs have a remarkable opportunity to support the sustainability in the Egyptian economy. So this is something that you should be able to demonstrate in your problem statement. Or if you are doing a paper, this is something that you need to be able to demonstrate. Okay, the next one I was saying for you that you can easily, tap where is the gap from the um, future research or conclusion or discussion. So here in this paper, you can see that, okay, the first gap, the survey data provide a bird's eye analysis. It's a very generic analysis. How absorptive capacity can be directly and indirectly influenced innovation. So they suggest that upcoming research may drill down further, capture in-depth data using a qualitative methods or action methods or grounded theory. That is one gap that you can take in. Second one, okay, they say that is a self-reported data to measure the green innovation. Okay, it is widely used in the prior research. So, in adopting a measurement for green innovation, okay, you can use the other kind of data. The third one, okay, because of their analysis, they did not control the moderating effects due to the sample size. Their sample size is small. Okay, as a result, okay, for independent research would be enriched using findings by examining the impact of potential or moderating effect of organizational, cultural, and characteristics. That is the next gap that you can put in. The fourth one is on the theory part. Okay, they adopt a realized perspective of absorptive capacity. So, however, the next one, you may also use the dynamic absorptive capacity. And the last one is actually on the issues of the software. Okay, so how you can fill in the gap. And of course, this is the reference that you can refer to, that has been published in the area. So after this, when you read your paper, look for that particular thing. Okay, so to be more on that. Right. So my advice to you is in order for you to find the research gap, you need to read critically. Not only reading, accepting things how it is, but also to challenge things, ask. Okay?